Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first ever Summer Community Days. I'm Ali Wiesel. I'm the Director of Developer Marketing here at Census, and I am joined on stage by Emily Hawkins, Data Engineering Manager at Drizly, and Census CEO and co-founder Boris Jabes. We'll be starting here in a couple minutes, but before I hand it over to Boris and Emily, just a couple housekeeping items on the platform and how you can move about it today. In the top left corner, you can find a hamburger for all of our tracks, so you can go and explore all the different speakers we have going on today. You can also find on the white nav bar a couple items for breakouts and the lounge, as well as the tab to join the Operational Analytics Club if you would like to ask questions to our speakers after the sessions, network with other folks, and just join the community to participate. On the right-hand side, there is the chat function. Feel free to let us know where you're calling in from. We would love to kind of see who's representing today. And then if you have any questions for the speakers that you would like them to answer at the end, go ahead and drop them in the Q&A tab. We'll also have a couple of fun polls about Drizly that you can weigh in on and try and guess a little bit about their customer behavior. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Emily and Boris, and I will see you all at the end of the session for the Q&A.
Thanks, Ali. Emily, it's delightful to be here together live.
Yeah, I'm excited.
For those, I feel like we should probably not just introduce you, but you should probably tell people who might not know where you work and what they do.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm Emily. I work at Drizly. I'm a data engineering manager on our analytics team. For those who don't know about Drizly, we are an alcohol delivery platform. We were also just acquired by Uber, so we're going to be sort of like rolled into their vertical offerings. So kind of like Uber Eats, you'll be able to order from Drizly, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, when I was thinking about our conversation here, I can't resist, right? Like there's so much juicy potential knowledge to be gleaned from working on alcohol delivery and just delivery in general, obviously. And so you were kind enough to find some like answers to some of my burning questions, and we figured we'd turn those into a bit of a poll. So we put these out to the audience here, and I'll run through some of them over the course of our conversation. These definitely surprised me, so I think it's. I wonder how much of this is intuitive to everyone else or not, and how much is peculiar potentially to certain regions, and that'll probably get us into a whole conversation about how to segment your data. But let's start with one poll, the first one, which is like, what was the most popular kind of alcohol that people gifted this year? And so I guess there's a lot of gifting on the platform, right?
Yes. Lots of gifting. Oh, this one looks like this is just the most popular item in general.
All right.
There is another question on gifting, though.
All right, fine. This will be only mildly confusing for people only listening. So what was the most popular item that people ordered across the platform? So what is the number one alcohol people ordered last year on Drizly? And so we gave people 4 options, and that is Tito's Vodka, La Marca Prosecco, Bud Light, or Josh Seller's Cabernet Sauvignon. And this is, let's give people a few more minutes, but let me ask you one question about this, Emily, first. Did you, when you pulled these numbers, these kind of stats up for today's conversation, mm-hmm. Were you surprised at the answer, or do you think these are kind of permeating the everybody kind of knows this inside the organization?
Yeah, I knew this one already. I didn't I checked the data anyway, but like I already knew what the answer was.
But when I think about, you're at the center of everything, right? You're at the nexus of data at Drizly. So you probably have more stats about Drizly in your brain than you probably even want, right? You probably can't, they probably come by your desk, so to speak, all the time. Yeah. Is this something that the average person at Drizly who's outside the data team would also know the answer to? Or is this something that's kind of obscure?
They might. I think some of these things are also like fun facts that like kind of go around Drizly, like during onboarding and stuff like that. Um, so most people probably know this one.
Got it. This is not in the, so this is more of a, in the fun facts internally rather than the kind of weekly snapshots of data that you send to the team.
Yeah. Yeah, although this might be on a Looker dashboard somewhere.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Who knows? I don't know all the dashboards that are out there anymore.
I gotcha. Well, people guessed correctly. So the top two answers that people voted on here are vodka and Bud Light. And vodka is indeed the most popular item ordered on Drizly last year.
Yes, Tito's has been the number one item for like years.
For years.
For years, yeah.
Wow.
Not sure why, but everyone loves Tito's.
Do you find that when you, as the data team at Drizly, answer questions and provide capabilities for people to ask their own questions and get answers, do you find that people just want to know the answer, or they look to you for this kind of question of why? Like, I feel like those are two different aspects of what people want in data, and I'm curious how much of that falls on your shoulders.
Yeah, maybe not like me specifically anymore, but I'd say it's like a combination of both, probably. Like depends on the circumstance, but sometimes it's just like I want to know this number, and then sometimes it goes deeper into like why is this the answer?
Right.
Yeah.
So which of course is not always an easy thing to answer. I feel like that's really the mystical sides of data sometimes, is you can find correlations all the time, right? But causation is just way harder. Well, so why don't you tell me a little bit about how did you end up in this role? How did you end up in this career?
Yeah, I can give a quick history. So I started my, I guess, like data career in my first internship, really. But as like a full time job, I started at Wayfair in 2017 as a business analyst. Um, I guess like in college, my studies were kind of like adjacent. So I studied information systems
Okay.
and minored in statistics. So like I always kind of liked the technical aspects of like this industry, I guess, and then um, ended up going to grad school for business analytics. I kind of like knew by the time I had my first couple internships, like I wanted to stay in data, and then just wanted to do a little bit more with my education. So um, yeah, I went to grad school for that, was working at Wayfair in analytics, but it was more like business analytics, so not really what we think of today as analytics engineering. So it was more, just building Tableau dashboards, writing some SQL. I wasn't really the one coming up with like the data sets to use. Like that was a whole other team.
I see.
But I was interested in that. So I like kind of started doing more with the BI team at Wayfair. Started learning like Git and like doing some code reviews and stuff like that. And just like kind of felt I enjoyed that side of the work a little bit more, like getting more on the technical side of things. And then just throughout my experience at Wayfair, just kind of knew my like what I wanted to do wasn't really like valued on my team, so I started looking elsewhere. Eventually came across Drizly. Someone reached out to me. I actually had never heard of Drizly before when they reached out to me, but I talked to the team, talked to the director of the team, talked to some other people at Drizly, and it just seemed like an awesome place to be. Everyone was super nice, and like I've had probably the best interview experience I've had at any company. it just felt right,
That's
right.
that's
Yeah.
you can't as someone who, spends most of my time interviewing and trying to hire, that's about as great of a review as you can possibly state. Any
Yeah.
any tips for people hiring on their data team? Like what made that interview process so great?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely the like recruiter who I was working with, um, his name's David Ventus. He's just like an amazing person. He's not at Drizly anymore, but um, just like the care and like communication felt very authentic and like they actually cared about my experience.
Mm,
And then just everyone I talked to, it just felt like everyone really cared about what they were doing and wanted everyone to have a good experience during like the interview process and stuff like that. So I never felt like, just some person they were talking to.
yeah.
Like they actually cared about how I felt about the team, and yeah, it was nice.
I think the best feature of that is you generally can't fake that. You know, people can pretty much tell if you're not authentic and caring about what you're doing and what your team does. So I think
Yeah.
that probably came through pretty well. But the team, so the company wasn't quite as famous back then, and the team you joined, how big was it when you arrived?
When I joined the team, I was the second BI analyst. There was one data scientist and one data engineer.
So there were four of you. Okay. And
Yeah.
today, how big is the team?
I think we're close to 30 now.
All right.
Yeah.
So I think that to me is like the first interesting theme that I wanted to talk to you about is like just kind of how to navigate going from 3 to 30 in just a couple of years. And so did the organization move around during that time? Like, were you always with the same management, or was this also, kind of, were you being shuffled around during that time?
Yeah. So, yeah, just for context, this was 2019 when I joined the team. Yeah, it's now 2022. So
3
we did
years.
grow really fast throughout mostly the past 2 years. 2020 was definitely the like inflection point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, so I had the same manager until this year, um, throughout my time on the team. Analytics has stayed relatively consistent, I'd say. Like, I think our structure within the team has changed. Obviously, since I joined, like, since there was only two of us doing BI, like, we had to do everything for the company. Like, we had to help with marketing, we had to help with product, we had to help with ops, we had to have our hands in all the different things. And then as we grew, we were able to specialize more. Um, so yeah, I started doing kind of everything and then focused more on product analytics for a while and then focused more on like data infrastructure and data engineering. And that's kind of what I ended up going
Right.
into.
Which is
Uh,
kind of what you wanted, right? You wanted to go
yeah.
down closer to the kind of platform side of things. Did you experiment with different specializations? Did everyone seem to agree that these were the right ways to, grow the team and have these specializations? Like, how should people think about when they hire their fourth, fifth, sixth person? Should they get dedicated to something, or how? Like, maybe you made
Yeah.
mistakes along the way. Like, how should people think about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was more our like director's decision on some of the headcount stuff, but I think the first like specialization that we broke out on its own was marketing. Um, and then I think the other one was we have a team called strategic partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
Drizly partners a lot with like alcohol brands like Tito's, Anheuser-Busch, like Diageo, a lot of these really big names. They want the data we have about their customers and who's buying their products.
Right.
So that generates a lot of revenue for us, and it made sense to dedicate like resources to helping them out, because they basically get dashboards with different data that they're interested in about their brands, their company as a whole, like market share, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we had some analysts focused on, just supporting their asks and things like that, because they were important to our business and it made sense.
Right.
So I think that's what the first need came out of, just like, we're getting these like partners are really important to our business. Like, we're going to dedicate analytics resources to them.
Yeah. Well, I guess because otherwise they would probably seek out their own, right? And so better to be the provider. How do you remember how your team was able to carve off a specialization or a focus in platform? Because in my mind, and I don't know if this tracks, everybody always wants to work on those kinds of things, and the business or the stakeholders are always like, nah, I need a marketing analyst, I need a stakeholder, I need a partner analyst. I just give me the analyses. And I'm sure a lot of people struggle with, how do I get headcount or dedication around working on the core systems? Mm-hmm. So how did you all do that?
Yeah, definitely. For a while, I was doing multiple things, like not just platform. Like, I would do, the time I had available, I would do like platform stuff, and then have to help out with other things that came up around like product analytics, or kind of like other places that needed support. It wasn't until maybe like last year, the year before, I think my title like fully became data platform lead. And we had another data engineer at the time, Dennis Hume, who maybe is here. I don't know if he's here, but he helped. I think he was a huge help in like getting the resources we needed to focus on the data platform, with just like how we were able to communicate the value of what a good data platform looks like, and how it was able to accelerate the work of the rest of the analytics team. And then our director as well, Ian McComber, he was also like a big help from getting support on the like executive level of like, this is important. And they had a lot of trust in him and in us, that we like knew that that was the right decision to make.
It does feel like always the correct answer for all these things is, if you have great people at all levels, great decisions get made. And I can't argue against that. Is there anything you remember, if people were trying to do this themselves and they were, struggling to get, let's say, the executive buy-in for that investment? Do you remember how they framed it, or how you framed it?
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of trust off the bat. Like, I remember when we were trying to move from Redshift to Snowflake kind of really early on, and Ian kind of brought this to our CFO and CEO and was like, gonna have this whole sort of like presentation of like, this is why we need to make this change. And they were just like, do you think this is what we need to do? Yep. Okay, we trust you. Like, go do it. So I think we were really lucky there that like we had that trust from the beginning.
Right.
So there wasn't really too much hard convincing we had to do on a lot of this stuff.
I mean, I think this is the job of every employee, whether you're a manager or an IC, right, is to build trust so that you can go make decisions quickly. Because if everything has to be justified every time, then you can't move very fast.
Yeah.
Do you remember that journey for you? Like, how did you kind of how were you handed a larger and larger slice of the Drizly data pie?
Yeah. It definitely helped that I was on the team early on, because I was able to take on these really cool projects that like, no one had really done before, or looked at as deeply around some of our data and like how it was impacting the business. So I think the fact that I was able to like do that really important analysis early on and like show the value to the rest of the company, and also like have it implemented as goals, and then like we reached those goals, people saw like, okay, yes, like we are improving because we're like doing XYZ, that this sort of like that the data showed was important, um, I was able to, I think, build a lot of trust there just around like the quality of the work that I was showing.
Yeah.
And
Well, it
actually
also
get
seems
results
like
from.
if I imagine in an organization, in most data organizations, you're constantly under a barrage of requests. And so it's extra hard to go take initiative on a new thing, right? But I guess I would probably agree that gets rewarded with, I identified an opportunity area and proved it, versus we're just doing what people ask us to do all day, every day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that probably goes a long way for anyone listening to develop clout and trust in an organization.
Yeah.
All right, let me pause for another good poll here. So let's get back to the one that we thought we were going to do at the beginning, which is the gifting. So we know that Tito's vodka is the most popular item ordered on Drizly, but gifting is a huge part of the platform, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think you told me it may represent like maybe the largest chunk of the usage. I'm not even sure.
It's not the largest chunk of usage, but it's something we're focusing on growing. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Well, I guess that because it has a certain virality to it, I guess. So what was the most popular kind of alcohol that people gifted rather than ordered? And so the options are beer, champagne, red wine, and vodka. And people have already voted, but it's very clear. I'm learning something right here in a poll, which I think this is an interesting factoid, Emily. I don't know about you, but you can learn about people by what they're guessing. And so people are still voting, but by and large, it feels like to me, no one believes that beer is something that people gift. Whether or not that's true is a different question, but people definitely don't believe it is. So, all right, it looks like people dominant think it's red wine, but this is tight. So people definitely think it's red wine, maybe champagne, maybe vodka, but red wine's ahead. And the actual answer, which I'm going to reveal here, is, of course, the most famous, I think, alcoholic gift of all, which is champagne.
Yes, champagne. Specifically, Veuve.
Yes, Veuve Clicquot. Yes, it's definitely one of the probably top 3 brands. Marketing matters, it turns out, in alcohol.
Yeah.
Well, here's my question for you on this. Since people are pretty divided on this poll, I think we're seeing a split of like 40, 30, 20%, right? So the only consensus is that people don't think beer is popular to gift. Is it actually spread out like that in if you remember, on the Drizly side, or is it really dominated by champagne?
The top 3 items, I think, were all champagne.
Wow.
Beneath that, I think the next one might have been like tequila.
All right.
But I don't remember 100%.
Sure.
I think it was tequila though, was after champagne.
But that says a lot that number 1, number 2, and number 3 on the gifts are all champagne. That says that, if you want to not screw up, you should probably gift champagne. But if you want to be an original, definitely don't do champagne. So it's up to you as someone who's creating like gifting. I think I'm embarrassed to say that I was unoriginal, and I think the last time I gifted alcohol and Drizly, it was champagne.
I mean, you can't really go wrong.
I mean, this is always the issue, right? It's like you can't go wrong. So that's why certain certain kinds of trends are very sticky because you don't want to go against the grain. But think about what you said earlier, right? Like that the way I think in an organization of any size, I think the people who most quickly are able to develop high amounts of trust, like more trust than the average person, is because they go against the grain and are correct, which you can never know ahead of time, right? But it's like if you have a hunch and it turns out to be true and people didn't expect it, I think the gains are really significant in your kind of within an organization.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I'm curious what was the turning point for you becoming a manager? Was it just this team got a certain size, or was it you set out to do that as kind of your career and your kind of your boss like made that happen, or how did you get to this?
Yeah. I've always had that dilemma, I think, of like, do I want to be a manager or do I want to just continue like being more technical?
Sure.
And that was something I still am figuring out, I think, but it was a good time, I think, for me to try management.
Okay.
Because our team was growing, and I was able to actually someone from part of the analytics engineering team transferred to my team under data platform to like because they're interested in developing in like data engineering.
Mm-hmm.
So they were my first report as a on the data platform team. So I'm basically
Was that
like
a tryout, or was it formally, the organization said, Emily is now managing this part of the org?
yes, exactly. Yeah. So I was promoted to data engineering manager the beginning of the year. This transfer only happened like a month ago, so it's still really new. But yeah, so I'm like onboarding. I mean, it's nice because they've already been at Drizly, so it's not like I
Sure.
have to onboard them to Drizly, but onboard them to the data platform team and kind of more like helping them grow into the data engineering skill set from just doing like analytics engineering before. So like the foundation's definitely there. So it's kind of like I think it's a good way to like ease into management.
Sure. Yeah. Starting small is good.
See if I like it. I mean, it's been great so far.
All right. Well, what's something that's kind of surprised you and how you like it so far?
I think like the like mentorship and like teaching aspect I really enjoy. Um, just like helping people like learn new skills and just like gain that confidence and like, hey, you can do this. Like here's a problem to solve. Like I'll be there to support you if you need it, but like I believe in you. Like you can do it.
I mean, of course, watching people succeed is always, I think, delightful as a manager. Do you find that people, you specialized early on, right? You have a graduate degree, like you said, right, in business analytics, so that you didn't just stumble into this field in this career. Do you find that the ICs that now work for you, or that you watch on your team, or that you coach, do they have the right roadmap for how to build their skills, or does school do the right thing for them, or do you have to really fill in, the blanks based on your experience?
Most people on the team have like been in analytics previously, so I don't think we have anyone on the team actually right now that like came right out of school. So most people had experience in some analytics job before this. I guess apart from we have some interns
Sure
on the team now,
but
but
even if
like
they have the analytics job, like what if I were, trying to be a star on your team, what should I be investing in? What should I be spending my time on?
yeah. It's hard to say now because we have different sub teams. So like we have a team, an analytics engineering team that just focuses on like our marketing data, one that just focuses on like our operations data, so like our sales team, account management team, product analytics, and then strategic partnerships.
Sure,
So
sure.
I'd say it varies by team, like what is actually most important to like specialize in or to like get noticed from.
I gotcha. Do you think that means most people already have the right baselines in statistics, in kind of, basic analysis tooling, or is that what differentiates someone who's great? I'm trying to figure out, like, let's even pick one, right? Like, say it's like, take someone who's on your stakeholder analytics team, and let's not put them, let's not name them. what would make them go from good to great? Since in some ways we just identified that's your job, right? Is to help them get to that.
Yeah. I think for the analytics team, like analytics engineering team specifically, like Drizly doesn't have like business analysts. So like our team kind of has to do a much wider range of things, like all the way from DBT work to like Looker and like communicating results and like analysis. What worked for me, I think, was being able to communicate my like recommendations really clearly to the business in a way that allowed them to like adopt those recommendations and like try them out. I think that's probably still one of the most important skills, is communicating your analysis and your recommendations to the business in a way that, makes it understandable and like actually say like, this is how we can like implement this and see the results.
Okay. I think this is interesting. So I'm learning two things here, right? One is, still at Drizly, from when you started to now, your analysts are really actually full stack analysts. They have to go all the way down into the kind of nitty gritty of implementing DBT models, all the way up to presenting information to stakeholders and helping them make decisions.
Yep.
Those are not two separate roles.
Yep.
And thus the eternal thing that demarcates a good to great analytics person is their ability to persuade. Is that fair to say?
I mean, that's just from what I've seen. I think it depends like what the person's interested in. Like, I also found success just becoming like an expert in some of our technology that we use, like DBT or Snowflake, like becoming an expert more on the like tech side, I think, is also helpful. Because like, for example, if you become like super comfortable with like DBT and you find a way to speed up, I don't know, like a model that's taking an hour, and then you do some optimization and now it takes like less than a minute, like that's going to be a huge like thing you can point to. I think you can do stuff like that, but there's still the communication piece of like, I did this thing and this is what I improved, and these are like the implications of like that. Because if you do something cool but don't tell anybody, like nothing's going to happen.
That's right, kids. If you do something cool and don't tell anybody, it doesn't matter. Well, but I think, as you went from 3 to 30 people, right? How much of the work is this kind of optimization work, which I agree is important, right? Taking something that takes an hour and making it run in a minute can have tremendous impact, or it could have none, to be fair. I have seen places where you could spend all your time optimizing something that is just a waste of time versus, answering net new questions, drawing a net new, like you said, a totally new dashboard or a new, team question. Has the mix of that changed from when you started? And like, if I were running a team and it was 3 people, 10 people, 30 people, do you think I should have a different mix of how much I spend optimizing versus building new?
Hmm. Yeah. Definitely when we were smaller, it was more like we were building a lot of new things. Um, like a lot of new DBT models and stuff like that of like
Mm-hmm.
things we just didn't have reporting on before, especially around our like event stream data, like our clickstream data. That was at least a big part of my role at first was like building out a lot of those models so we could track all of our event data. And then once people like joined the team, they were able to more like zoom in on that and be like, okay, like for example, A/B testing, we have all the data for it, but it's a very manual process to check the results of a test because we have to like go in and write all these queries against all these models to find the answers. Like, I'm going to automate this so the PMs have a dashboard that just
Mm-hmm.
like updates with results. So, like, we sort of, I think when it was smaller, we were setting a lot of the foundation. And now people are more like building on top of that foundation and like making things just more automated or quicker or, you know, yeah, things like that. I think just like quality of life improvements um,
Well, I
have
think you
been a
have
big part.
it's interesting. I think not only has your team grown, right, but obviously proportionally the number of people who want to use your output has grown, right? I assume if the
Yeah,
team went from 3 to 30, the overall size of Drizly increased by some
yeah,
similar amount. And so I could see how making things go faster, making things easier to self-serve, making it possible for a PM to not have to email you 4 times to get some kind of A/B test result
yeah,
becomes much more important, right?
yeah.
And so I think the subtlety that I'm curious, and maybe you could say, hey, you could go back in time, you would do things at a different point. What's what's something, for example, what's a process or a tool you're using today that you rely on today at 30 people at this stage where some of these things you didn't need to do before, but that where you can't believe you didn't do it sooner? Like you're kicking yourself. Like, I wish I was doing this when we were 3 or 5.
Hmm, that's a good question. Hmm, I don't know.
Okay.
I feel like we started off pretty from a pretty like blank slate at the beginning, so like we kind of made our dream like
Stack.
data stack and like I mean we didn't have at first we didn't have anything in Git, like there was no version control, there was no like code reviews, like we added all that in pretty early on. And I know stuff like that a lot of teams like maybe wish they added sooner, um, because it just like helps improve a lot of the quality and like cross
Totally.
communication between the team to know what's going on, like share SQL, share knowledge. Like I think I feel like we did pretty good about like foreseeing a lot of that stuff pretty early on and added it in.
What about
Um,
organizationally? Like, so
yeah.
I can see that you I think you're probably right. I think you early on guessed the quote unquote correct data stack that would scale with you, which is, congrats. Um, but obviously you must be managing your people who work for you now, right? You must manage their quarter like objectives or whatever. So you must have some process for managing them that probably didn't exist when you were just 3, right? Is there anything organizationally that you'd wished you'd set up earlier?
Hmm.
Or does it feel like a hassle right now?
Yeah. I think maybe one thing that we've definitely improved on in the past like couple months is like our prioritization and like how we plan work and how we communicate that out to the rest of the company of like what we're actually doing. And I think a lot of that is because we hired a TPM for the
For the data
analytics.
team.
Well, he was originally just for marketing analytics, but now he kind of is for all of us.
Okay.
But I think that was a huge game changer. I guess I wish we hired him sooner for sure. Like
Amazing.
that's been a huge help of like, because before we were basically our own PMs also. And now we have someone to really help us and make sure we're doing things the right way. And, have our Jira boards with all the like reporting around like what we're doing each sprint, and like we're getting more into the weeds of like all the agile stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. As someone who started their career as a PM, I'll take the plug. I think that's probably essential as you get to this size. 30 people kind of running around doing things almost screams you should have at least one, if not multiple, PM like roles to just orchestrate, communicate, and make everyone in the company aware. Well, actually, given that, how has kind of the more day-to-day data sharing process changed as you've grown? Like, has it always been just dashboards and Looker? Has it been meetings? How is it changing now that if there's 30 of you? I don't know. How many stakeholders are there? How big is Drizly overall, without including Uber for a second?
Yeah. Let's see. I think we are like almost 400. Let me see. I can see in our like announcement Slack channel. Yeah, like 380.
Right.
So almost 400.
So how have you evolved kind of the way data is being shared from your team out, or vice versa? How do you gather requirements?
The main place is still definitely Looker. That's where we expose, all of the data to the company. Definitely some people have direct access to Snowflake, more on like people who are comfortable with SQL,
Sure.
which isn't the majority of Drizly, but like the people who are and want to just write their own queries, like they can do that in Snowflake. But majority of people, Looker is their main portal to.
How do they learn now that it's so much bigger, right? There's people probably joining, like you said, daily or weekly that you so outside of your purview that you have no idea, right? How, and everyone I assume is in some form informed, should be informed or driven by data at Drizly. I'm sure of it. So how do they even discover what they should be looking at, where they should, what specifics, what things mean?
Yeah.
Do you have to do monthly sessions where you reteach everybody in the company? Like, here's what things are.
That's something I think we're still improving on. So as a company, we have like LinkedIn Learning, like membership. So we have some trainings, like on my team, we, recorded like a Looker onboarding training, and like people who join Drizly, like can watch the training, and there's some kind of like hands-on examples of how to look at our like most important dashboards. Like we have like a company like OKR dashboard, for example, and like everyone should know how to read that dashboard and know what our like metrics are and how we're tracking against them and stuff like that. So those things we try to communicate as early as possible. So like during onboarding, and people who want to get more technical within Looker, I mean, I've seen people take that initiative themselves, but I think as the data team, we want people to have like that curiosity and like want people to be excited about finding data. So we try to put out like resources as much as we can, like run, like you said, maybe some like one-off trainings if people want them. But I think we're still trying to figure out, I think a lot of people are still trying to figure out like the best way to do that.
Here's my idea. You should drop Easter eggs inside various places in Looker so that you encourage spelunking. And if people find the Easter egg, they get like rewarded. So like maybe it's a fun fact. Like for example, this one, I think this one is, people are also very, this poll came out interesting. So we asked or I asked you, like, what is the most popular time to place an order on Drizly, right? So time of day or time of the week. And so I'm somewhat happy that no one assumes Monday at 3 p.m. is popular. But I thought the other three were all, kind of equally likely. We had Saturdays at noon, Sundays at 11 a.m., and Fridays at 5 p.m. So no one voted for Monday at 3 p.m. and basically no one voted for Sundays at 11 a.m., which I think is interesting. So Sundays, people don't assume Sundays is a drinking day. But we have a lot of votes. We're basically split, it feels like, between Saturdays at noon and Fridays at 5. So I'm going to guess like this is the eternal debate of like, Friday post-work drinks versus Saturday brunch. And let's see. All right. So people are leaning towards Friday, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Emily, that is the correct answer, right? Friday at 5?
The correct answer, yeah.
Friday at 5. And again, okay, so here's my question. So is this also, to your knowledge, similar to what people think, where it's a little bit split, like Saturdays at noon is actually a pretty popular time as well?
I'd have to look again, but I don't know. If I had to guess off the top of my head, I probably would have guessed like either one of those.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I actually don't remember what the like split was when I looked it up, but
how often
Fridays
do you think
was definitely like you could tell really easily like the spike was way above everything else.
Sure. It's interesting to me sometimes how often do you think like, we'll go do all this research, we'll go to this first principles data research that's like expensive, gathering the data, analyzing the data, making sure it's statistically significant, and it arrives at like every human's intuition.
Yeah.
It's this is one of those things where you never want to stereotype, but of course, like one of the reasons stereotypes have emerged out of thousands of years of human history is that like, sometimes it like collides, which is an unfortunate thing where it's like, but we should still do the work to gain confidence and trust. But you're going to get these situations, I feel like.
Yeah.
But at least it's 5 o'clock somewhere at all times. So maybe Friday is just the busiest day overall, right?
Yeah. Also, like, I am surprised no one thought about Sundays.
I would have guessed Sundays for sure. Yeah.
I think about brunch on Sundays.
Yeah, me too. I'm surprised Saturday is far more dominant in terms of the poll.
Yeah.
This is why our last one will be excellent because like it looks like everyone's tied on our final poll, which will be great, and then that will be a fun topic. Well, okay, let me. You alluded to it at the beginning, and you've definitely said that there's transitions occurring at Drizly in terms of how it's going to, as a product experience, going to kind of integrate with the larger Uber offering. But what was the acquisition like for your team specifically? Just even the process of it. Were you involved? Did the data team have to, I don't know, provide like some support as part of the acquisition? What was that like?
Yeah, I think we definitely had a part in the acquisition around like supplying a lot of the data
prior to the acquisition.
Yeah, like the whole, so like for those who haven't gone through an acquisition, like it's a huge process, especially with like the FTC and like government involvement. So like they obviously want to make sure it's not I don't even know, like anti-competitive stuff like that. So we definitely had to supply a lot of data before anything was finalized to the FTC and stuff like that, which anyone who's gone through
what's that stakeholder like versus having like the marketing team as a stakeholder? What's it like having the government agency as a stakeholder of the data team?
I personally didn't have to pull the data. It was definitely like hush hush at the time. So like, I think it was just our director who was doing it. He was
Were you aware?
That was involved. I was like adjacently aware.
Okay.
But I wasn't like in the room. But yeah, it was like, I think it was like, I don't even know. I don't even remember what they asked for, but it was kind of just like, we need this, pull this for us, send it to us by like end of day.
Right. I assume the deadlines are terrible because they're from outside, right? So they have no context of like your day job and what has to be supplanted.
Yeah.
Was it stressful for your stakeholders inside the company who didn't really understand why maybe everything was going slower?
I don't know if they really like knew or could tell.
Okay. So you kept the trains running smoothly.
Yeah. But once the acquisition actually happened, not much actually changed for our team. We are still independent, so we're like a subsidiary. So
Right.
like we still have our own systems, our own data stack. Everything still runs independently. Now I think we're starting to get a little more like cross collaboration with like sharing data and stuff like that.
So you have now like a counterpart within the Uber data teams?
Somewhat. I mean, obviously they're massive and it's like hard to find who exactly your counterparts are.
Wow.
But we have, I think, a core team of people we've been working with and sharing. Like I was able to like, set up some specific like data sharing in Snowflake and stuff like that. So
well, that's an interesting way to do it, right?
yeah.
So they have their Snowflake, you have yours, but you could now connect just by using data sharing basically within the two companies. That's great.
I just set up like a little section in Snowflake for them,
and they can just do whatever they want. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's nice. Kind of similar on their side too, where we have kind of like special accounts where we can like access some of their tools.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, let me ask you this last question and then we'll take audience questions. Is there some tool, technique, process from Uber that you discovered through this that's really helped your team?
Not yet, but I think it will more so probably on like data science. I think they might have, there might be like cooler stuff for them to use. Like I know Uber has a lot of like really cool data science tooling and like machine learning, which I don't think we've had too much access to as of yet, but I can see that being pretty cool once we get more integrated there.
Well, Emily, thank you. Let's do the final poll, and then there's a ton of questions from the audience, so we're not done here. Okay. The final poll was, what day did Drizly receive the most orders in 2021? So which day of the year? And here the audience is totally split. So there's 4th of July, there's Thanksgiving, there's Christmas, and there's New Year's Eve. And basically it looks like people voted across the board. What is the correct answer, Emily?
New Year's Eve.
And is it dominant?
Yes. That is always our biggest night.
It's good to know. Good to know. New Year's Eve, folks. Okay. Well, Emily, we got a ton of audience questions here, so I'm going to ask you a couple until we get booed off the stage. The most voted question was from Kat Hong, which is to you, like, what does data quality mean? How much does the quality of your data matter in your pipelines? So,
yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's definitely important. Sometimes you can't really control the data quality as a data team because, like, you're pulling from all these different sources. Like, I mean, I can't control what comes through like the Salesforce API as much as I wish I could. And then even things like internally from like MySQL, like our MySQL database, like, we can't always control what the engineers have set up to go into like our core like transaction tables and stuff like that. So It definitely is important. You, as a data team, you can't always control it, but that's, I think, what we strive to like improve, at least in the data warehouse, like in Snowflake and DBT. Like that's where we can clean the data and like make it sort of what we wish it came in as. um,
Yeah.
And then same thing with our like clickstream data. Like event data in general is known for just being, I think, very messy.
Yeah. So I
And
think what
that,
I'm hearing, and I
yeah.
think this is important and valid, is like there's data quality from is it even in the right shape? Can I even use it? Versus I think later on you end up in the like, is it semantically valid? Am I answering the question correctly? Which I think is like downstream quality. But people forget that like the initial just cleaning up your data is so essential, right?
Yeah, I guess that's where my mind goes as like someone
Hey,
who's
that's
working on like the pipelines to bring data in.
yeah. All right. We get a question from Amy Shapiro. What tools have been helpful for your team to get the non-technical folks more data literate, able to kind of self-serve?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like just looker trainings. That's the
Like
only like
these are videos that you prepare for people?
self-serve tool. We have some training videos, we have some documentation. We'll also do like some live trainings here and there.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's great. All right, we have a question from Yuhan. How do you prioritize your analysis versus and engineering tasks in Jira? So what's your magical PM process?
Well, all of our teams have separate Jira boards. So like
Okay.
my Jira board's separate from like marketing analytics. They have their own board. Like every sub team has their own board. Um, so all my tasks are engineering. Uh, the other teams are mostly analysis. I guess they're like pretty separate.
Gotcha. And then I'll follow up on that because we got the kind of a related question from Stephen Ebery, which is, do you use sprints or some kind of agile process to within those teams, and do different teams do different things, or is it kind of one process?
We're pretty much all on sprints. We do like 2-week sprints.
Okay.
I think we definitely use agile, but I'd say we're not like to the letter of like
Nobody
this is
is.
agile. Like we
That's the
just make
secret,
it
Emily.
work for us.
Nobody is actually to the letter of agile
Yeah,
anywhere in the world.
we make it work for us. We're not like super strict about it.
You're not zealots about it. I understand. I have yet to uncover anyone who's truly quote unquote doing it perfectly right. So I think it's just a myth.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, listen. Oh, I guess there's one last one that we can try to fit it in if you want, which is what is the, let's see, how is the data org structured? So we talked a little bit about it earlier, but specifically, do the data engineers and the data analysts have shared responsibilities, or do they have completely separate responsibilities?
Yeah. So, I mean, my team is data platform, data engineering, and then there's data science. Um, they are focused like similar to analytics engineering, like they have different verticals that they focus on. So there's like data scientists for specifically like for marketing, for ops, for strategic partners. Same thing as analytics engineering. So that's sort of how we have it broken out. What's the
That makes
next
sense.
part of the question? So yeah, I'd say like responsibilities are mostly separate. I mean, we all work in the same tools. My job is more like making sure their jobs are better and easier, like using our tools in our stack.
I gotcha.
So I definitely like work with them, but like they're not really the ones that have to like,
Debug the tools.
add CI/CD to like our repos. Like that's more my team. I mean,
Understood.
people can do it if they're interested in it, but
they can take initiative. I understand.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Emily, this was a really, really delightful conversation for me. Thank you for doing this with us. There's a lot more talks today, so people can learn a lot of similar and better and different and more varied topics. And yeah, I think if I'm going to take away one thing is, people should take initiative in all situations, and that, that can lead to great success.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.